I'd like to share a beautiful story on the importance of great communication or lack of, and how it could destroy marriages and create great ones. A woman writes a great story. I was raised in a quiet home by quiet parents in Israel. They were honest, hard-working people, my parents, who just managed to make ends meet. They were not well connected, never had anything handed to them on a silver platter. They were simple people. I was the third of 5 children. I didn't suffer from any middle child complexes. We were all so quiet, mild, and unassuming. There was no one to feel crushed by and nothing to feel rivalry about. My parents were both only children in their homes, so we didn't have a large extended family. We ourselves and us was all there was. There was no family friends either. My father was the youngest member in a well-established shul, much older members, so he didn't get noticed much. Imagine a family that was never in the limelight for any reason. That was us. As a young child, I didn't notice anything different about my family, but when I reached high school, I realized how isolated my family was. My classmates were always talking about large family get-togethers and their neighbors and their mother's best friends from seminary, and hearing all this made me feel like my family had been left out somewhere. Years later, I heard from my brothers they were always on the sidelines socially. They went to good schools but didn't know how to mix and make friends. This meant that when it came to starting shidduchim and people made inquiries about them, the answers they got didn't sound good. Half the people who were asked would simply say they didn't know anything about my brothers, and the other half would say vague things because they didn't know them. Either way, it didn't leave a very good impression, even though my brothers were good boys. My youngest brother was the only one who seemed to make it socially. He was the only one who ever brought friends home. He was definitely more successful in life as a result, but we were a liability to him as he grew up, so he stayed away as much as he could because we were such simple, innocent people, and he moved far away when he got married. But I have to tell you something. My 2 older brothers turned into two older singles. No one was reading them shidduchim. I waited for them until I was 23, hoping they would marry, and I could avoid having to bypass them. At that point, they convinced me that I shouldn't worry about getting married before them. Maybe a girl had to wait for an older sister, they said, but not necessarily for an older brother. And since I was the oldest girl up the line, they didn't want me to feel that she'd be held back, and they gave me permission to go ahead and start dating. My parents approached a few shadchanim and asked for suggestions for me. They had no idea how to make inquiries, and they didn't know what was code for that. That left them with the only matchmaker's words to go on, and they took it at face value. My parents were not too experienced in shidduchim. I met 2 boys who said no after our first date, but the third boy wanted to meet me again. We were not a great match, but I couldn't have known that. I had no clue about the other types of guys out there. I hadn't dated anyone else, and not one of them might be right for me. All I saw was this guy who was different from my brothers. He seemed to be a leader type, so although I didn't feel like I liked him, I agreed to keep meeting him. After a few more meetings, he was ready to get engaged, and I said yes. His large family and my small family were the only ones celebrating the engagement. No neighbors, no friends, no one else was involved. Soon after our engagement, my fiancé started talking disrespectfully about my parents. He said they were naive and dumb. I wanted to tell him they might be naive, but they're definitely not dumb. But I was the quiet type, so I kept quiet as he bashed my family. As the wedding approached, I noticed more unpleasant behavior from my fiancé, but I did not even dream of complaining. After the wedding, the real nightmare began. He insulted me at every opportunity. He shattered my confidence. He made fun of me. He demanded that I improve and never had a good word for me. I had been plucked from a peaceful home devoid of cynicism and harshness, and now found myself on the receiving end of constant bitter criticism from this husband. At that point, the only positive in my life was my work. I was actually pretty talented, and I earned a nice salary working as a computer programmer. I handed the money straight over to my husband, and he did as he pleased with it. He would get up around noon, didn't even work. He barely learned and didn't work either, and whenever he wasn't asleep or out, who knows where, he was always putting me down. We had kids, a boy and a girl. My life was unbearable, if not miserable, but I didn't know I had a right to protest. When our son was 3, my husband started treating him as badly as he did me. I knew I had to do something about it, but I didn't know what to do. Things took a turn for the better when my son turned 4. At that time, I decided to attend a self-empowerment class where one of the women shared something from her life and received a lot of sympathy. The difficulty she described wasn't even a fraction of the hell that I was going through. Something lit up in my brain. I approached the Rabbi who was giving the class, a gentle, wise woman, and I told her I was beginning to think something was very wrong in my marriage. She was ready to listen, and as I poured out my heart tearfully to the Rabbi, she seemed shocked, like what I was saying just couldn't be happening when I told her what was going on in my life. When I was done, she offered her full support and asked me to allow her husband, a respected rabbi, to approach my husband. I was hesitant, but she pointed out that it couldn't get any worse than it already had. My husband got a call from the rabbi asking to meet him about a matter of great importance. When he got back home, my husband was angry and livid, throwing things throughout the house. I don't want to describe the scene, but berserk isn't a strong enough word of what he turned into. I was scared to get back to the Rebbitzin after that, but she was smart enough to come to me. She visited me at home and saw enough to understand what was going on in my life. The rabbi and the Rebbitzin both tried to get through to my husband, but he was immovable, like a rock. He wouldn't even hear of therapy, and he certainly wasn't going to change. One day he told me he wanted to divorce me. When I first heard that, I felt like a terrible failure in life. But when I talked it over with the Rebbitzin, she assured me that in my situation, this is the best outcome, and she advised me to accept the get. And so just like that, I was divorced. But followed with 3 very difficult years. I was so lonely. My parents felt terrible. They had no idea how to cope with my broken marriage. They were distressed and frustrated. I still had my job. I put my salary to good use, caring for my children in my home, but I still felt like the most miserable, forsaken, friendless woman in the world. The Rav and Rebbitzin kept in touch with me though. They invited me to their house, called to see how I was doing. They encouraged me when I was down, and after a while started suggesting shidduchim to me. I met a few divorced men who were not right for me. My life experience had enabled me to see subtleties and know what to watch out for. Then he suggested a widower who was 12 years older than me. It seemed far-fetched, but the Rebbitzin thought it was worth a try. We met, myself and the widower, and I felt as though he came from a different world. I could immediately see he was a good man, through and through. He was smart, he was calm, he was caring, he was fascinating. He asked questions that showed understanding, and he gave answers that showed character. I found myself hoping and praying he would want to see me again. He proposed after 4 dates, and we set the wedding date 6 weeks from then. We were married in a quiet ceremony, and my life was completely changed. It's hard to describe just what transformation it was. At his suggestion, we found arrangements for our children and went to a retreat for a month on our own. That month was a catharsis for all the pain I'd gone through. I told him everything and he listened intently. After I was finished unloading, all emptied out, he started filling me up. How? How did he fill me up? With words, ladies and gentlemen. He filled her with words. He told me how he viewed me. He saw me as a special woman, so good and pleasant. Words that I never heard from my first husband. He described me as being dedicated, smart, joyful, kind-hearted, gentle, and hundreds of other praises that he lavished on me. Praises that I never heard in my life. Not from my reserved parents, and certainly not from my first husband. At first I thought he was trying to build me up, but soon I understood that he really believed what he said. I thought to myself nervously, he's going to find out the truth one of these days. But he just kept on radiating warmth and positivity verbally to me. It was easy to see how his children had turned out to be so special, each of them warmly welcoming me as their new mother, although they had so little time to get to know me. When that magical month was over, we went back home to my kids and focused on building our new blended family. I've never won the lottery, but I just know I felt happier than any overnight riches could have ever made me. Once again, I was transported, this time from a life of loneliness, a life of anonymity, to a life better and happier than words could describe. My husband was wonderful. He was kind. He was gentle. He was so thoughtful. He was so loving, supportive, and smart. His children were accepting and clever, funny, giving, and remarkably well-adjusted for young people who had lost their mother after a devastating bout with cancer. I promised myself I'll do my best to fill the void for them. I got up early to prepare their lunches and get their clothes ready. I helped them with their homework and listened to their stories. I was involved in every aspect of their lives and noticed every mood change. No matter how much I gave though, I still felt there was nothing compared to the happiness they brought me. All these gifts were totally unexpected. I didn't know such a wonderful life existed, and suddenly I was living it. My 2 children blended right in with their new family as if they'd always been there. They became lively, happy, and contented. We had 2 more children together, and our happiness was so complete. Now, I'm marrying off one of my husband's daughters, my own daughter for all intents and purposes. I acted as her mother throughout the whole process, dating, l'chaim, shopping, organizing the wedding. The other day she left me a thank you letter that brought me to tears. Its content is private, but I can tell you it was so full of warmth, so full of love, so full of acceptance of me as her mother figure that my happiness reached dizzying heights. Ladies and gentlemen, what great communication can do, it can create worlds, it can create human beings, it can destroy people if it's poor. Over the last few years, my brothers too got married and had children. My husband reached out to them and brought us all closer. His warmth has certainly helped them too. We were a family that was forgotten somewhere in the dark, waiting for the sun to shine on us. I'm not kidding, that's how it felt. My husband came like the sun after an eclipse, suddenly enveloping us all in light and warmth. And the message is clear. So many people take friendship and love and acceptance for granted. They think these precious gifts are just part of life. No, it's not so. There are some of us who are walking in the dark. Some people are not appreciated. Some people are not raised. They're not supported emotionally or verbally. And that's terrible. We want to tell everyone that it's important to develop a healthy support system. And if you have it, to appreciate it and to work on it and to always strengthen it. And if only people realized how much power you have bringing joy and light to others through some nice compliments and a good word, you don't realize how great you can become. And my husband was the angel who took me and my children out of the darkness and gave me a chance of a happy life to all the future generations that will come from us. I pray that Hashem will give him strength and health and happiness always, and I will forever be grateful to him for shining his light on me after the eclipse. And that's the message tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Let's shine our light on our dating partners. Let's shine our light on our spouses. Let us be ourselves a shining light and a radiating light to our families, to our spouses, and to our dating partners. And if anyone out there needs my help in any way in communication or dating help or dating assistance or getting matched up or shalom bayis or having a relationship analyzer, you need coaching in any way in dating or shalom bayis, feel free to reach out to me from anywhere in the world at 305-206-1916. You can write me an email at drjackcohen18@gmail.com, or you can simply go on to my website, drjackdating.com, and contact me there. Have a wonderful week.